JBR Podcast.
Wake up and check it out.
Where the music and life connects. Let's go.
Today we've got J.W. Jones joining us, a true heavyweight in the international blues scene. He's an incredible guitarist, vocalist, and a Juno-nominated artist who's toured all across the world. It's an honor to have you here today, so tell us, how'd you get started playing guitar and what drew you to the blues?
Great intro. I love it. I want that everywhere I go now. Well, what drew me to the blues? So when I first started, I was actually a drummer before I was a guitar player. So I was playing drums along with like Led Zeppelin stuff, you know, Lenny Kravitz and Hendrix and all that kind of stuff. And then I heard about this guy who was playing Hendrix covers, and it was Stevie Ray Vaughan. So I heard Stevie playing, you know, Little Wing and Voodoo Child and stuff like that. And then I started listening to Stevie, and it's like, you know, there were those couple tunes that were Hendrix songs, and then the rest of it was like straight blues, you know? So I was like, oh, what's all this? And then I heard about the Fabulous Thunderbirds and Jimmy Vaughan, and, you know, those guys all referenced B.B. King and Muddy Waters and T-Bone and all that stuff, right? Freddie King and Albert Collins and all the great blues guitar players. So the more I started to hear about those names, the more I started to find those CDs and, you know, whatever, and start listening to it. And a lot of this was also influenced from some friends of mine who were already into blues long before I was. They had all the CD collection and the record collection. Their parents had introduced them to all this stuff too. So anyway, I saw BB King, or I started playing drums, and I was doing all that, playing that music. And then I saw BB King in 1995. I was 15 years old, and I was like, okay, this is it. I want to play guitar now. You know, I want to do that. So that's what really drew me to the guitar the most. And then I had an acoustic guitar at home that my parents got for me when I was a kid. And I didn't know how to play it. Didn't have any lessons or anything. So I was completely self-taught. A friend of mine, Manny, taught me a few chords, and he taught me how to play like a 12-bar blues. So I literally went around the house going, ja, 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 for probably like, I don't know, 4 months or 6 months, you know, and then I was trying to bend the strings like Albert King, you know, and doing all this stuff. And because I didn't have a teacher, it was a pretty slow process when I think about it compared to now. You know, when I teach people, it's like we do that in the first lesson, then we move on to something else, and then we, you know, it's like they already know that thing from however long ago, but I was just for months and months, you know. But anyway, and then I eventually got electric guitar when I was 16 and a half or something like that. And boy, was it easier to bend on the electric than it was on my acoustic.
No kidding.
So then it went from there.
For sure. That's awesome, man. So yeah, I think we kind of came out of the same school. I think my story is very similar to yours. I'm a little bit older than you, so a little bit more early on. But yeah, the self-taught thing and burning out the CD players and the tape cassettes, trying to figure out those things. And it's really cool because you do lessons and like one-on-one stuff with people. So you're kind of letting them bypass all those trials and tribulations, you know, we had in the early 90s, you know, late 80s a bit for me, in terms of we didn't have the technology to connect with people like that. So before we get into other stuff, how do people connect with you that are interested in maybe getting some lessons and learning the blues from a more authentic point?
Thank you. Just online through the website, jw-jones.com. My email address is info@jw-jones.com. And no, it's interesting now because like you say, I mean, in a lot of ways we can help people bypass some stuff, but at the same time though, I wouldn't change it at all because that really trained our ears, right? I'm sure you would agree. That's like, we had to press rewind 100 times to figure out what the heck that thing was. And then when we got it, we were like, yeah, that's it. Right now it's like, here's the thing. And you just hand it to them. And here's the thing on a silver platter. It's like, but they didn't work for it. And now they don't necessarily know that it's on the E string instead of the B string or whatever the case may be, because we can hear those little tiny details. Right. So I think there's a lot of benefit to that too. But having said that, with learning blues on YouTube, for example, I mean, there are great players on there. My friend Kirk Fletcher, for example, does lessons and stuff, but I mean, there's no feedback, right? So you can learn as much as you can, and it's great for advanced players, especially. But if you're starting out, you need someone to go, you got that, but there's something a little funky about the way you're playing that thing. You need feedback, right? So I think that's important.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that's very Very true.
Yeah.
So getting into the influences, you mentioned Stevie Ray and Jimmy Vaughn. You just did an album. And if I'm not mistaken, Gordie Johnson from Big Sugar, did he play and produce on that
Yeah,
for you?
most of the
And
songs.
then,
I mean, it's about I think it's 7 tunes with him, and then 4 or 5 I did here in Ottawa with a guy named Eric Eggleston, who's amazing. Totally different styles, these two guys, in everything about their approach, and I love them both equally for different reasons, you know. But yeah, I did. The majority, I guess, was in Austin with Gordie.
yeah, and then you got to have Jimmy Vaughn on there, which is very cool because, as I said earlier, you know, both of us are kind of out of that Texas blues style, especially with our guitar playing. So what was it like getting to work with Jimmy Vaughn on the album? That must have been pretty cool.
I mean, I have been dreaming of that forever. He's my favorite living blues guitar player. For me, it's like B.B. King and then Jimmy Vaughn and then everybody else. Yeah, it was really cool, man. We went down, Gordie and I went down to Seaboys where Jimmy plays all the time. And we went down and watched the show, and Jimmy comes up after, hey, how's it going? You know, blah, blah. I've known him for many years at this point. And Gordie said, we're making a record at my place at JW. We'd love it if you'd come and play some guitar on the record. And Jimmy goes, oh, all right, well, call me tomorrow. So I called him up, and he said, can I do it tonight? I'm in the neighborhood. It's like, yeah, you're Jimmy Vaughn. You can do whatever you want. But then Gordie and I had to get to work on it because we didn't have a song for him to play on yet. We had just kind of started the sessions, so we didn't have anything ready. So I was like, yeah, no problem. You can come tonight. Yeah, I'm acting cool, you know. And then we recorded a tune, and I played guitar and drums, and Gordie played bass and keyboard. And so by the time Jimmy got there, we had something, you know, for him to play on top of. And we both sat there with our guitars on the deck, and Gordie's studio is like outdoors. So he's got the shack and the doors are just wide open and the control room's in there, but it was like Austin in August. So it was like painfully hot during the day, like 11 a.m. we're soaked. Luckily Jimmy came later in the afternoon, so it wasn't too bad. But yeah, we sat beside each other. I had my Les Paul and he had a Strat, and we just traded riffs at the end of the tune, and he did a solo and we traded at the end of the tune. And it was a really interesting experience because like, I was totally like, pinch me, this isn't actually happening. Like there's no way I'm sitting beside Jimmy Vaughn trading riffs with Jimmy Vaughn. This is not happening. And we didn't trade. Yeah. If you listen to it, I actually wrote it out at one point for one of my students, but if you listen to it, we're not trading fours and we're not trading riffs. We're just trading. So sometimes it's 2 bars, sometimes it's 3.5 bars, sometimes it's 4 bars, and sometimes it's 2 bars again. And it was just completely natural, and it only happened one time. We only traded, I think, the one time. The rest of the stuff was him just getting his solo down. And yeah, incredible experience.
So, and how many albums out do you have now? You have quite a few. I should
know the answer to this. I think it's 12. I think this is the 12th one. Yeah.
12. Yeah. Well, I guess once you get double digits, you kind of lose a bit. Great. Yeah. So would you say that this was like one of your favorite albums, or is there another album that you would consider to be your
I mean, I love them all for different reasons. And by love, I mean, the first few make me feel gross because I feel like I've improved so much since then. You know what it's like. You hear your old stuff, you're like, oh,
I can relate to that.
What was I doing? Oh, I wish I waited 5 years before I recorded that. But
yeah, I relate.
Anyway, I mean, I've recorded with so many of my favorite guys. I've been so fortunate. You know, Kim Wilson was involved in 2 of my early records, my second album, my third album. So that was pretty sweet. And I don't know. I mean, I had Hubert Sumlin and Charlie Musselwhite on an album we did in Sun Studios in Memphis with Richard Innes and Larry Taylor, my favorite blues rhythm section ever, you know? Wow. But what I love about this album is that it's 100% original material. And I finally got to a point where I could sing about certain topics, which was like really important for me. And it's hard, man. I mean, for years I was just trying to like put the personal life stuff and my upbringing aside. So it's like, nobody's going to know about that. No one's going to know. I'm just going to appear like I've got it all together and I'm fine over here. It's going to be okay. I don't want them to know that I came from that upbringing because maybe they'll judge me or whatever. And now I look at it the other way. I'm like, people seem to have these pretty wild ideas about who I am and where I come from. And it's like, boy, do they not know at all, you know? So,
Yeah.
so I was able to sing about a couple of those things, Papa's in the Pen being one of them. And there's a song about my mom on there too, who passed away. So it's a song about her death, which is like pretty heavy to sing about, you know?
Yeah.
And then on my previous album, I had a song called Who I Am. And on a different album, I had a song called Cocaine Boy. And if you listen to Cocaine Boy, Who I Am, and Papa's in the Pen, you get a pretty good idea of where this guy actually came from.
No, that's pretty cool. And that's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to start doing podcasts is, you know, people do get that, you know, they feel like they know you, and not to insult anybody that, you know, you may not know on a personal level, or myself, I experience it as well. You know, people that feel like they know you, they're much closer to you than, you know, perhaps they are in reality. And then there's this like perception of, you know, who you are as a person off stage, which is like nowhere close to reality,
exactly.
you know, and people know in the back. And so I think it's going to be cool for people to hear some of that stuff. But you mentioned working with Hubert Sumlin. That's cool. That's pretty cool. And Sun Studios, I did an album there probably 7 years ago. I never released it because the gear was pretty cool there, but a lot of it was breaking down. And you know, like halfway through this song that's great, all of a sudden, you know, the left drum overhead signal died, right? So it was like so what was your experience there? Because that was such a cool place, having all the markings where like Elvis was and guys were.
It was interesting. I mean, what you mentioned about the gear kind of brings me back, because when we brought the recordings home to mix them, we had all kinds of problems with the sound, to be honest, because what happened was the upright bass, there wasn't enough baffling between the upright bass and the drums. And it's not just like some guy playing upright bass, it's Larry Taylor. Like, you know, he's on all the Tom Waits stuff, the Monkees, Hollywood Fats Band. I mean, he's done everything, this guy. Kent Heat, you know, played Woodstock. Like, he's playing the greatest bass stuff you've ever heard. And all the drum stuff is going into the microphone. And it was like, you could turn the drums off and you could hear drums and bass. And so we ended up using the engineer, Jason Jack Nunes, actually did a thing where he did something where he reversed the phase or polarity or something on the bass track and was able to make it almost isolated, which was incredible. So there's that. But in terms of the vibe in there, I mean, so Richard and Larry are like my favorite musicians ever, you know, of any kind, you know? And so to be in there with those guys was really, really special. And between takes, Richard would just be sitting there, you know, at the drums and just looking around and taking it all in. And it was like, I invited him to come and record with me at Sun Studios, you know, like, but he's also getting something out of it that's bigger than that. You know, it's the fact that he's in Sun freaking Studios, man. He's in the room. Like, this is the room. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's pretty cool. And then when Hubert came in, he said he had recorded there, but I don't think it was with Wolf. I think it was with someone else, because he did the Howlin' Wolf stuff somewhere else, at Chess, I guess. But at one point, Chess may have used this space for recordings. There's something that went on there with between Chess and Sun and
Chess and Sun. Yeah, I heard. I don't know the truth or behind it, but yeah, a lot of apparently some of the Chess recordings were actually done in
maybe
Sun
that's
Studios
what it was
or something.
Yeah,
something along those lines. I don't know. Somebody might quote us on this.
We don't know, so they can figure it out.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's cool. That room is like pretty magical, and there's like some energy to be in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's wild. So all the touring you've done, what's the most notable road story you might have? Something that you can share where people will go, okay, now I get a better picture of who J-Dub is. And
a road story. Oh my God.
Something you can share.
There's that. Something you can share. And I should have been more prepared for this, because I know you mentioned that. Oh, geez. I'm not prepared for this question. What's wrong with me? I mean, there's so many things happen, and I run into people all the time who are like, remember that time you said this on the microphone, or this thing happened, or whatever? But I was thinking of one the other day, so here's one for you. this is actually not far from home. We were just in Quebec, but you know the deal where you have harmonica players that come on stage or start playing from the audience. You've had that, I'm sure. You know, you're just playing a song, you're playing a show. It doesn't matter where on this planet you are. Someone pulls out a harmonica and starts playing along, probably in the wrong key.
Oh, yeah.
I can do one better than that, though, before I tell the harmonica story. One time, we were in Springfield, Illinois. We're playing, and all of a sudden, I'm not kidding you, someone was playing the trumpet. The trumpet. Someone took out a trumpet, took it out, and started playing along with the band. I mean, granted, he actually knew how to play. And someone told us, I forget who he played with at the time. He was like, yeah, he used to play with like Duke Ellington or something, or I don't know, some old big band or whatever. And it was like, well, that's nice. He can play, cool, but like zero concept of like, I shouldn't be playing the trumpet during someone else's show. Like, what is happening here? But back to the harmonica story. So over the years, you know, up until this point, I didn't know how to handle the harmonica thing. I would just ignore it or say, can someone, I feel like someone's playing, can that, you know, maybe you could stop doing that. And then we just keep playing. Well, this one particular night, I broke the band down and we're playing quietly. And I said, okay, so look, sir, I see that you're playing the harmonica. I understand you really want to play, and I'm going to give you a chance to do that. But we have to make a deal. You can come up and play, but then after that, you have to promise you won't play anymore, right?
Shut the fuck
exactly.
up.
So he goes, all right. So he comes up on stage, and so band's playing quietly, right? And I went, vroom, and the band stopped. And I said, go ahead. And he goes, no, I want to play with the band. I'm like, no. You play harmonica. Come on, go ahead. You can play now. I'm giving you a chance to do your thing. Go. And so he tried to count the band in. And we're in Quebec. So he's like, I'm like, no. I look at the band, I'm like, no. He tries again. I'm like, I said, go ahead. He goes, oh, no. I got all pissed off, swore at me, and got off the stage. But hey, I kept my end of the deal. I said, you can come up here and I'd let you do your thing. You didn't do your thing. You think you're going to jam with the band and now lead my band as well? Are you kidding me? Get out of here, man. So there's one little one. But awesome. I mean, there are a lot of stories. I really need to make a little list of them, at least some highlight ones so I can share some more nasty stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Or at least so you don't forget them and you can
That's
pass
the thing.
them
Well,
down.
you know, before having a daughter, I thought one day I'm going to write a book. And then I had a daughter and I thought, I don't want some of these things in a book.
Yeah. I got 4 daughters, so I can relate. You know, I don't even know if they watch some of this. And yeah, there's some stuff that you just want to take to the grave with you.
Absolutely.
You know? And it's funny because I had some guys on the podcast and they were like, oh man, I'm going to be no filter. I'll fucking say it the way it is. You know, they get out there and afterwards I'm like, what happened? They're like, well, I don't want anything coming back at me.
Exactly.
Is it? Yeah. Yeah. No, that's cool. So what's going on now? I was looking at your tour dates. So you got a lot of shit going on. And actually I saw you're going to be in, hold on, let me pull
White
this
Rock,
up.
I guess, is the closest to you.
Well, no, actually, Sherwood Park, Alberta. Okay. That's up by Edmonton, right? Am I mistaken? Right. Yeah, because I'm playing in Calgary on the 19th and 20th.
Okay, cool.
So you're coming up from St. Paul, so you're like
we're basically driving from St. Paul to Saskatoon, which is a terrible drive. I think it's 15 hours or something. And then we're going to wake up the next day and make the rest of the drive to basically Edmonton, right? And
to Edmonton.
And play at Dan and Connie's place, Dan Lynn Studios. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't been to Edmonton in years. I usually go to Calgary these days. But yeah, what is Dan Lynn Studios? Is it
It is an actual studio, like a recording studio, but they do shows in there. It's kind of like a private. It's basically a house concert, but I mean, they put out a bunch of chairs, you know, and you get 100 people in there. Or no, not 100. Sorry. No, not 100. Yeah. No. It's more like probably 60 people, 50, 60 people. Great. It's really intimate spot, but it's in a studio. It sounds really good. And we're just going through a regular, you know, PA system, but it's a nice sounding room and the energy is great. And this crowd, I mean, they're there for the music, and that's, you know, actually I'm leaning a lot more towards that direction more and more when we're on tour now, we have more house parties than ever, because it's like, what are you going to do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, some Thursdays? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I had talked the other day actually about this. You know, when I came on the scene a few years before you did, you mentioned you started playing guitar in 95. So I started touring with Russell Jackson in 95, and I was probably 18 or 19 at the time. And all the gigs in those days were like 6-night a weeks. They were Monday to Saturdays. And then that dried up by the late 90s. And you probably remember this because you would have been,
you'd either do the front end or the back end, or the whole thing.
Yeah. And then it was like front three, back threes. And then the front threes dried up and it was back threes. And I was talking with Nigel Mack about it when he did his podcast. And it was like, well, what do you do Sunday to Wednesday when you got Thursday, Friday, Saturday? But now there's not even Thursday, Friday, Saturdays. It's like all single nighters. And a lot of the stuff I've noticed, I've been getting back into playing more myself recently. And a lot of it is these smaller house parties and more private, intimate events. And I actually enjoy them more than some of the club gigs, just because the sound's great. The vibe is cool. The people are so into it.
Well, and they're there for the right reasons. Like, they're there for the music. And in most cases they're paying, $25, $30 or more to be there. And so it's like it's like you or me or anyone else. When you pay money to see something, like, you're automatically putting a value towards what that is. And therefore you're not going to go in there and just get drunk and be an idiot and not pay attention to the thing you paid for. That's why you're there, is to take it in. Right. But what's funny about that is there were 2 clubs on this planet that were doing 7 nights still, or 6 nights. There was Blues on White in Edmonton, and the Hog's Breath Saloon in Key West. And so I used to go to Key West twice a year, once on a tour, like a 3-week tour, and we'd play the Hog's Breath for a whole week, 7 nights straight, and then drive out, do the tour there and back. And then I'd fly in with the band, and we would just do the 7 and fly home. And then I was doing the same thing with Edmonton twice a year. And it was great, man. I mean, because then you'd build you'd put Banff and a couple things, Calgary, whatever, before or after it. And it was really great. And then, Blues on White just went to, like you said, the one-nighter kind of thing. And maybe you're lucky to get 2 nights or something, but that dried up. So there's not that. And then in Key West, they've moved towards more cover bands. So we don't really do that anymore either. And that's it's a pretty big hit to the income when you just took 4 weeks of pay out of your year, And so.
Yeah. And a lot of those gigs, I remember booking a lot of tours around Blues on White, because it paid good. It was then, like you say, you can, and Calgary, when they had the King Eddie at the time, they used to be 6 nights. In the Blues Can now, they're 7 nights a week music with 15 shows a week, but it's 12 different bands. Exactly. So when I go in there, I'd be lucky if I get 3 nights out of them. It's typically a Friday, Saturday type thing, right? And it's hard to book. I go in there just for those 2 nights and come back. Maybe I might go up to Red Deer the night before or something. But other than that,
where are you living now?
It's like, how do you? I'm out in Maple Ridge, just outside of Vancouver.
Okay. Right. So still quite the drive, though. What's the drive to Calgary?
Yeah, I do it in 9 or 10 hours.
Big drive still, yeah.
It is, yeah. Well, when I toured with Russell Jackson from the 95 to 2000, we put on over 1 million miles.
Crazy. In
those 5 years. We did a gig. I remember when I first started with the band, I think the first gig we wrote the van off and wound up in a ditch in Grand Forks or in a creek. But the next gig after that, I seriously contemplated music as a career, because we played a Wednesday night in Whistler. We played Thursday night in Rapid City or Missoula, Montana, then Friday night in Rapid City, South Dakota, and then Saturday night in Kansas City. They were 15-hour drives between gigs. I was like, fuck me, play till 2 a.m, drive for 15 hours, play till 2 a.m, drive. Yeah. I was like, I can't do this, So when you say you're driving up from, where was it? St. Paul,
that's one of those.
Saskatoon. And I don't think a lot of people realize it. They come out to the shows, and they're like, oh man, what a great life you live. And they don't realize how fucking hard it is.
It's hard, but it's still not to downplay it at all, but it's rewarding. And it's also, it beats the alternative, 100%. Right? So it's I gladly, I there's something wrong with me, obviously, because I somehow strangely look forward to the long drives. It's a weird thing. If you told me you can have the entire tour will be 2-hour drives, I'd be like ecstatic, right? Because, oh, that's amazing. 2-hour drives every day. Great. No problem. But there's something special that happens in those 15-hour drives because like you're talking with the band, you're bonding at a different level. You know, it's a time for me to get a lot of work done on my laptop, you know, while the guys are talking and I'm not driving, I'm working away, doing things, you know, tour posters, whatever.
Yep.
And so pros and cons, you know, it's like you're isolated, you know, you have 15 hours and you're going to be driving at least 5 of them. So you got 10 hours. What are you going to accomplish for 10 hours? You better do something, you know? So,
yeah, no. And that's what I use about the drive to Calgary. I like to just decompress from, you know, the crazy rat race that, you know, I live in at times. But yeah, it's not for everyone. I've seen it break people.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's also made people. Yeah, I commend you for the touring you do, man. Like it's not easy these days. 20 years ago, everybody was doing it. But now there's not a lot of guys that are like touring as hard as you're touring.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing I love about it is at the end of every tour, I'm a better player than I was at the beginning of the tour. You know, and that compiles over time. I mean, some guys sit at home and practice. For me, it's just where I get better and where I take the chances and where I'd go outside is on stage. You know, when the moment hits, that's the only time I feel like I can actually push boundaries. I mean, I could practice more, but this is it just happens. And then by the end of the tour, you're playing a ripping solo and you're thinking about something completely different that has nothing to do with what you're doing, but you're still doing this thing. And it's like stream of consciousness. It's like, how do you do that, man? That's like insane, but you can't do that on the first gig of the tour, you know?
No, yeah, for sure. And I think that's experience, right? And going back to Jimmy Vaughn, I remember seeing an interview with him where he was like, it's like a radio, you know, you eliminate the static and you tune it in and it's just there. So it just becomes an extension of yourself. And you're not going to get that practicing at home. I never practice at home either. And I only really take my guitar out when I play some gigs, but yeah, it's cool. So how do you must spend a lot of time booking your gigs and, you know, doing a lot of musicians don't understand the business side of it. So it's clear that you get the business side of it to make it work in today's environment because 20 years ago, you know, you could, a lot of those gigs just fell in your lap. People called all the time. Nowadays,
well, I always think,
you know, so what advice do you give for what advice do you give for somebody that's wanting to get into it and do it more?
Well, I've had this conversation with a lot of no, but I never say don't. You see, that's the thing is like,
I know.
I don't know. I know the bottom line is you think you're going to be a musician and you're going to spend most of your time being a musician, then you're totally wrong, period. If you do that, you will not make enough money to survive, let alone retire, let alone, you know, feed your children. You have to just, in the early days, I mean, I was on the computer all day. I mean, like, I don't mean I worked an 8-hour shift. I mean, I was on the computer for 15 hours, you know what I mean? And I was emailing anyone that would listen to me or reply to me. And it didn't matter whether it was an Anson Funderburg to talk about BB King or whether it was, you know, venues or trying to connect with people or whatever. And this is when the internet was still pretty young. You know, I was like trying to find venues and record labels and try to connect with everybody. But nowadays it's like when I don't have a lot of gigs and a lot of income coming in and a lot of work, I know the reason why. It's because I didn't work hard enough 4 months ago, you know, 5 months ago. And the more I put in, which is like earlier in the spring, I really went crazy, like focusing on doing this. I went through a divorce and stuff like that. So that like took the wind out of my sails for about a year. And then when I finally came back to it and got focused again, it was like, whoa, now look at my schedule. It just went, now it's full. Well, why is it full? It's because I hustled and I went and worked it every day and tried to find opportunities. And, you know, I was emailing old contacts and I was doing all these things. So if you want to get into it today, the only way you're going to survive is to be at the computer way more than you want to be at the computer. That's it. There's no other way.
Yeah. The business side of it, right?
Yeah.
You know, yeah. Nigel Mack touched on that. He was like, said, you know, I'm just on the phone all day long. I'm on the emails all day long. And, you know, that's something that I haven't done. You know, I work in technology and I'm like, man, fuck, it's so much work. I miss the days. I was spoiled, when the days of agents, right? They dealt with
Yeah.
all that shit and they just took their 20 points, and
Yeah.
I just got to hang out with chicks and play music.
Take me to that.
Yeah, exactly. But I've been through a couple divorces, so to speak, so I can relate to those issues. So what else is going on? How's your album doing? What have you? And as you said, you weren't too prepared. Well, I didn't look up to see, because you're constantly getting awards and nominations and all these like great reviews and stuff. So what's been going on with your new album? How's that been?
The album went really well in terms of the response, and the reviews were all great. I hired a publicist who shall remain nameless, who did almost nothing in this country, to the point where I was calling CBC and the Ottawa Citizen and saying, "Hey, did you guys hear from him?" And they're like, "Nope." And I'm like, "Pardon me?" So I set up my own CBC interview. I set up my own, this is insane. Wow. But because of that, I missed a lot of the first initial excitement for the album. I didn't have any local or Canadian national coverage at all. So that was very disappointing. But otherwise, it didn't get nominated for anything at the Maple Blues Awards, which was a bit surprising to me because of the originality side of it. It's 100% original. It's got freaking Jimmy Vaughn on it. It has what I thought, and Gordie Johnson, Canadiana, what do you want? But it didn't get any noms, and that's okay. Sometimes I just skip a year, and other times I get 4 nominations or whatever, and that's cool. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But so it did well in terms of the response and everything. But I think at this point, I've gotten to the stage now where it wouldn't matter if I had friggin' Pavarotti on the album or Buddy Guy or anyone else. I just don't see it being like the perception I used to have of what a big album would be like. I think that's just gone now. Nobody's selling a ton, tens of thousands of records. It's not happening. And even to get on the Billboard charts, you don't need that many sales. It's not like, whoa, he must have sold 10,000 copies in the first week. No, you need to sell 1,000 copies or 800 copies to get on the chart. It's not, it's not rocket science, because there just isn't that much happening. Right. But honestly, the way I look at records now is it's just a moment in time, and you capture what is important to you, is special to you, and the vibe you want and the vision you have at that time. Here it is. You release it to the world. That's your calling card for the next 2 years, and you tour on that thing and you talk about that thing because you love it and you put the time into it, and then you just do another one, So people say to me, "Oh, one day you're going to break it. You're going to hit big." And it's like, no, I'm not. That's not even happening. It's not happening. No.
Doesn't work like that anymore.
I'm not going to be Gary Clark Jr. or Kingfish or Kenny Wayne Shepherd. It's not going to happen. For whatever reason, those guys have certain things. They got to a certain level, and that's cool. And I'm totally at peace with the fact that that's not going to happen to me. And I don't care. If you said, "Do you want this?" I'd go, "Yeah, sure, I'll have that." But alternatively, it's if all your focus is on awards and record sales and Grammys and this and that, it's you lose your mind, right? So I'm totally at a point now where it's I have my daughter basically 70% of the time that I'm home, that I'm not playing gigs. So I have her almost all the time. And so that's amazing. And I get to do what I do. It's I've got a pretty sweet life, so I wouldn't change that.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. It's you're at the stage where you do it because you want to, not because you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's a great place to be, because the politics in the industry can drive you fucking bonkers.
Absolutely. And I've been there.
If you go for that, but
I'm sure you've been there too. We've talked about that stuff, right? It's you pull your hair out, you're like, why can't I get that gig? I want that festival that everyone's playing at. And then you realize maybe they just don't like you. Maybe they just don't like the way you play the guitar or the way you sing. They don't like you. They don't like the way you look. They don't like the way you sound. Too bad. This other festival and these other 25 festivals will book you. It doesn't matter about that one. Who cares?
Yeah, exactly. Back to your album. Who's playing drums on that? Do you have one drummer throughout it, or because you recorded in 2 locations?
Several drummers.
Because I listened to it, And there was the song you did with Jimmy Vaughn. I was like, man, that guy's got a good shuffle on that one. Like, that's pretty fucking tight.
Well, I originally played the shuffle on that, and then it was like, no, it's going to have to be better than that. so we got Jason Corbiere. He's Jimmy Vaughn's drummer now. He took the drum chair from George Rains, who's one of my favorite drummers ever. And Jason kind of has, I mean, he's kind of like a protege of George Rains without, necessarily training with him or anything, but he's got that same kind of vibe. And to play with Jimmy, he's obviously trying to go for that sound. So anyway, he's on that tune. Stanton Moore, insane drummer from New Orleans. He's on the title track, Everything Now. And so he just mailed the tracks in. And then we had Will Lorrain, who was in my band for years. He's on a bunch of the tunes here. I'm missing someone and my brain is stopping. But on Papa's in the Pen, Sterling. Aaron Sterling.
Putting you
Need
on
more
the spot.
caffeine.
Yeah.
Aaron Sterling, he tours with John Mayer, and he's been on all kinds of big hits. Huge stuff. Who else has he been with? I mean, I've lost his discography in my mind, but he's on a bunch of hit stuff. But he's John Mayer's drummer essentially. And anyway, he's on Papa's in the Pen, and he is so killer, man. Like, oh, what a player. And the sounds he got recording and that whole process was awesome. What's funny about him is that the reason why I really fell for this guy as a player was because of his personality. If you go to his Instagram and watch his videos of him talking, it was during COVID. I was watching his videos and I was dying. I was laughing so hard. His humor is just amazing. And it was his humor that got me in. And then I'm like, who is this guy? And I start watching his clips. Dude can play anything, man. He's recording all the time. He's doing all these weird things and, just a wicked player. He can do anything. And then also it's like, oh, he's also Mayer's drummer. Like, what is happening? So anyway, and then I got talking to him and I was like, hey, can you be on this tune? So yeah, him. And have I named all the drummers? I did play drums on it, on the album, on Keeping Me Up. And Gordy played drums on the album as well. So I think I've named all the drummers. Yeah.
Nice. That's so cool. So what's your gear setup like these days?
So I'm using a Kemper, which is a digital amp, and made in Germany. And it's one of these things where everyone's like, oh, you can't go digital. You can't do it, man. And initially I was playing a Pro Junior with a reverb pedal. That's it. And then if it was a bigger gig, when we're touring with George Thorogood or whatever, I'd have two Pro Juniors side by side, just putting in a little more air, and it was plenty loud. That's kind of all I needed. And it sounded great. And then I kept having problems with speakers and blowing tubes. And my favorite Pro Junior had the best sound. It had the best sound because it was always on the verge of exploding. So it's like, that's why it sounded amazing. And so I was getting frustrated. The airlines were sticking their fingers through my speakers. They broke 3 speakers. So it happened from the Canadian guys, the American guys, and then an airline person once. And in all 3 cases, they said, we're not paying for that. And in all 3 cases, I said, no problem. I'll look forward to telling my social media followers about this. And then they came back and said, we'll pay for it. It's like, okay. So they all paid for those speakers. But I tried a Kemper, and what I did was I went to the Pro Junior setting on it, and I put my reverb in front of it, and I just started playing like I would at a sound check, and I had goosebumps. It sounded exactly the same.
Wow.
As this thing, as a Pro Junior, as a tube amp. I was like, how is this possible? This is unbelievable. And then I dialed it in, got it to the point where I was really happy with it. And it's amazing. So it takes the DNA from the speaker of the amp it's cloning, right? Profiling. So for example, I took it to Little Charlie's house, Little Charlie from Little Charlie and the Nightcats. And you can go on YouTube and type in Little Charlie Kemper, and it'll blow your mind. His favorite super reverb of his entire career. Okay. I mic'd it, stole the profile, the DNA of it from the Kemper itself, and then ran it through my speakers, just like, they're basically PA speakers essentially. And we did a blind test, and he had no idea which amp was which. He could not tell the difference between my digital amp version of his amp and his amp. You have to see the video. It's actually really funny. And
I'm gonna look that up, because here's the funny thing. I'm such a tube guy, and I play a Kingsley amplifier, and I had the founder creator on it, and I just bought myself, I had to get some EL84s because I'm losing power. It's that typical thing. But yeah, like we were talking exactly what you're saying in terms of some of this technology and circuit boards and all. I'm not familiar with the tech, but to not be able to tell the difference is just like,
yeah,
what?
He jokes around that I tired him out and that I had 2 speakers to his 4 speakers, and it wasn't fair because I was blocking part of his speaker at one point. But like, check it out and you'll see for yourself. It's like he starts getting to the point. He's like, I don't know which one it is. It's really funny.
So explain this to me. Like, do you take your own speakers with you, or is it just a head?
So
like,
the Kemper itself is just a head.
It...
I don't have it here to show you, but and then I had a custom cab built for it. And so it's just a 12-inch speaker, or is it 15? I always get this wrong. No, it's a 12. It's one 12-inch speaker, but it doesn't color the tone at all. It's basically a PA speaker. So it's not pushing air,
like
though.
A Celestion.
Yeah, no, it's not pushing air in the way that a real amp does. It is. So here's the thing: when you have the volume low and you play through it, you know how when you use a distortion pedal or an overdrive or something, when the volume's low and you can hear your strings on your guitar and it's like blasting, but the volume's low, it just sounds fake, right? It sounds like artificial.
Yeah.
But you get to a certain point on the volume of the amp where now the volume coming out matches the drive that's coming out of it in a way that's like, oh, that makes sense. It's like the old records where they cranked a Marshall up. They're moving air and it's getting louder and the tubes are getting louder. Well, now you can do that with a pedal. So when you're playing with a Kemper, if the volume's too low, yeah, it sounds artificial. It sounds artificial exactly how your overdrive pedal would sound if your volume was low, because that's not how an amp sounds at that volume, right? But with the Kemper, again, just like those, you get to a certain volume where it's like, okay, this matches now. Like this could actually be doing that through an amplifier, right? Like it did to the Pro Junior. You have to get it up, and then it's making the tubes work, and you're getting that tone, and nobody goes, hey, there's something weird with that, because it's, it is what it is. So same thing with the Kemper.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. Yeah, I'm so gonna have to check that out. So, do you use pedals with it, or are you?
So you can. I don't really do much with pedals. I mean, not because I'm a purist, because I'm really not that pure anymore. But I put a Boss Fender 63 reverb pedal in front of it, which emulates the tank. Yeah. Which I have a tank over there. You can't see it, but you used to carry around the big tanks, and then they go psh, psh on the stage and drive you nuts. And there's another thing to carry around. Boss came out with this pedal. I mean, I don't know, 2007 or 8 or something like that, maybe 9. And it was like, holy cow, man, it sounds exactly like the tank. Wow. So I did that. And so I always put my guitar through that before it hits anything else. And that's it. And then I'll use like a Strymon, Flint Strymon for the tremolo. And that's it. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. And then your guitar, you Les Paul?
Yeah, I'm still using the Les Paul mainly. Sometimes I play a Strat, but it's mainly Les Paul. Yeah.
And what about your string setup? What are you doing
Nothing
for that?
Fancy. I use 10s. I used to use 11s. And then I thought, well, I might be, when you're down in F or something and you're bending on the G string, it's like, it's getting a little rough. So I thought, well, I'll try 10s and see how that sounds. And I didn't lose any tone as far as I could tell. So yeah, I've been using 10s ever since. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, because I'm using 11s now, and I was thinking about dropping down too, and didn't think that that's going to affect the tone too much, just because I don't play 6 nights a week anymore. So if I miss 3 weeks and then all of a sudden I'm playing 3 nights in a row, by the end of the second night I'm fucking
and when you first start playing, I don't know if you get this, but when you first start playing, when you haven't played for a week or two, you feel like you're playing 13s. It's like, why is this so difficult right now? Ugh, you're battling through it. But if you put 10s on there, it's a much, much better. Yeah.
Much nicer. Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. So before we wind her down, is there anything else you want to throw out there?
I don't know. Find me on the socials, JW Jones Blues, and on my website, join the email list. The website is jw-jones.com. And otherwise, support live music. Go to shows, people. Go to the show. Buy the tickets in advance. How many shows get canceled?
No, absolutely. That's a. Oh God. Well, in BC a lot, because it's hard to sell tickets in advance here. But we will do your socials in all the descriptions, so people can just jump into the descriptions to get that stuff. But yeah, you're right. Buy the tickets for the shows and buy the music.
Yeah, pay money for
buy
the
music. Like go to jw-jones.com and buy the music. I know for me, I can't even give my shit away. No, I'm not kidding you. I have a pop-up on my site, right, for a live album I did at the Blues Can a few years ago. And it's like, sign up to my email list and you can have the entire album for free. And I was getting people signing up and I thought, okay, there's a lot of people, but I'm like, I want to know if they're actually like give a shit about the song or they're just signing up. So I went from giving away one song to the whole album, but then I had this flow where it was like, you'll get a coupon code and you have to go through the checkout to get the free downloads. I've like 200 people sign up and not one fucking person has gone through the checkout and used the free code. You know, so it's like nobody wants the music. I don't know. Like you said, is it just me or is it just
I don't know, man. Right? I mean, like my Spotify numbers are pretty horrendous. But I see artists who are literally doing nothing. Like they are actually not playing any gigs. And I don't mean like they're playing they're not playing any gigs. And they have like major numbers on Spotify or whatever. They're making $0. Like, what's the point? So now you have this thing that you can say, oh, I've got good numbers on this song. Who cares, man? You're not making any money. You're not doing anything. You're not moving people in real life. And are those numbers even real? I mean, you can buy anything. You can buy numbers. You can buy YouTube views. You can buy anything you want. What's the point anymore? I don't even care. It's like, whatever.
It's like social status that does nothing for your bank account, you know. And I actually, because you've been up for a Juno and I got a Juno nomination like 10 years ago now, and I remember some heavy hitters in the industry. I won't mention names, but they had called me up to congratulate me, and they said, "Congratulations, but it's not going to make a difference in your bank account." And I was like, what? Really? I thought, man, you get up for a Juno, it's got to be worth
you think
something.
that this is the stepping stone to the what? No. I mean, I know blues bands in Canada, they have won Junos or several Junos, and we're all playing the same gigs. Like,
I know.
Nothing's happening here. You know, just make a living and enjoy it, and don't have the illusions of grandeur, because it ain't gonna happen. But also, I want to recognize that we're both wearing record label shirts, which is cool.
What do you got there? Kent,
the original blues label. BB King recorded on this label. I mean, I had this shirt made because you can't find this shirt anywhere.
I wasn't sure what that was, but Stax. I got this when I was down in Memphis. I know we talked about. I have a Sun Studio ones too, but I wore it on a podcast a couple days ago, so again. I figured I'd make it look like I got more than one T-shirt. Right?
Awesome, man. It was great chatting with you.
Well, yeah, you too. I appreciate you taking the time to be on here. And I'm going to once over your site again for everyone, jw-jones.com. I'll try and make it out to some of your shows here when you're in BC.
That'd be great, man. Come out to the Blue Frog.
Yeah, man. Be good to.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
All right.
For sure.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Take care, buddy.